We're not quite living without glyphosate yet, but Alan, if you could, where are you? Oh, there you are. Slightly left field. I don't intend to read all the biogs in full, but I recently saw Alan speak at the Amenity Forum conference, and Alan's going to talk to us about kind of some of the tried and tested alternatives to the control of invasive plants. Alan has a long working history as running complete weed control in South Wales since 1982. So you've been around the clock a little bit. So please welcome Alan to the stage, and you're going to talk to us for the next 20 minutes on alternatives. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks, Steve. Thanks very much, Steve. Thanks for the introduction. Thanks, Peter, for asking me to talk here at this fantastic conference. Thanks for putting me up last night in that lovely hotel, which is what it seemed like, and the lovely dinner we had. I must admit that I was there in 1976 at Wiltshire Farmers when glyphosate was brought into the market as Roundup, and went to this meeting at the Bear Hotel in Devizes, some of you might know, and this chap was saying this is going to be the future of agriculture, which I think it really was, and he actually slurped a little bit of it, and I don't know where he is today, but hopefully he's still okay. And I've been using glyphosate since 1976. In those days, it was, I think, £90 a drum, 5 litres. Since then, we had a race to the bottom, but now we're raising the bar again, and glyphosate is back to proper values, and it should be valued as one of the most important bits of kit in our arsenal against weeds. I won't have any malfunctions today with my suit jacket. I'll get my glasses out when necessary. Thanks, Peter, for pointing that out. I've been with Complete Weed Control since 1982. Between 76 and 82, I was with Wiltshire Farmers, and I ran a farm over in Oxfordshire, just 300 acres of arable just by myself. I had one guy help me on corn cart in the summer, but everything else I did by myself, and worked for a company called Velcourt. So we were using German varieties of wheat and barley. We were cropping over 4 tons to the acre in those days, which was fantastic. All went for milling, most of it, all the wheat, £176 a ton. So if you think and I was on £4,000 a year, working like a little slave, but that was agriculture in those days. But it's all changed now. And then 1982, I was lucky enough to meet a chap called Roger Turner at the Royal Show. And he asked what I was demonstrating. I was demonstrating a sprayer, Toyota, which we took the back off. We put an aluminium bed on it, made it into a sprayer. He said, "Oh, I fancy that. I would like 7 of these." I said, "Fantastic. Why would you want 7? And he was franchising his business. So I bought a franchise in South Wales, and since then, been going from strength to strength. Partnered up with Ian Graham, who was a franchisee up in the northeast in 2006. And when Roger retired, myself and himself, we bought the whole company. We've got about 40 offices all around. We've got 3 in Ireland, 1 in the north, 2 in the south. We've got Scottish franchisees who are here today. Keith and Richard, who can talk very ably about all sorts of hogweed, giant hogweed, bamboo, all the Japanese knotweed you can imagine is up there. And myself, all the Japanese knotweed you can imagine is in the Swansea Valley, so I'm always here to talk about that as well. But we've got people all over in London, the southwest, the southeast, all in the central belt. And this is the network in 2022. We've got specialist coverage. We don't just specialize in Japanese knotweed, although that's probably about 20% of our business, but the main part of our business is local authorities, street pavements, etc., mowing margins with residuals such as shikara. We do a lot of weed control on aquatics. We've got a weed cutting boat. Obviously, we're short of a lot of the herbicides that have been taken out of the equation now, but you've just got to make do with what you've got. And of course, we're ideally positioned for national contracting. So life after glyphosate, I think Peter's ably talked about glyphosate for the last presentation. And what does it mean to live without glyphosate? We just haven't got a clue, really. But you've got to minimize herbicide use. That's the Sustainable Use Directive. We've got to learn to live with some weeds because there just isn't the money in the coffers to go around spraying weeds willy-nilly. Poor safety and appearance of public spaces. Well, that will definitely happen if we don't spray a lot of the public spaces, etc. And it means spending more public and private money. As this later in the presentation, you'll see how much it does cost to go over to alternatives. And to date, there's no magic bullet for if we got to go without glyphosate. And what are our choices? Well, back in 2009, DEFRA wanted the first report into the Thanet study, and it was it was published in 2015. Langard, Al Mason was involved with this, and then in 2017, Bristol started to look at another way of using acetic acid, which is basically 50 times as strong as the vinegar you put on your chips. And we were talking about glyphosate being becoming a lot of plants becoming resistant to glyphosate. And now this is Canadian fleabane, and that can grow as tall as that, 2 or 3 feet, in about 10 days. It's an incredible weed. But in Bristol, we've got personal experience of that this year. It has been a major problem, and so has Buddleia, those type of things. So Bristol parks have gone away from acetic acid now. They are going back on the glyphosate, and obviously the mayor, who's in the green, on the green side of things, he wants to cut down the amount of glyphosate that is used. But as they can see, there's no alternative but to use that. So herbicides use is under the microscope in all sectors. And must just say, there's been another ruling today in the US, just this morning, being published, that Bayer have won another court case against somebody that was trying to take them to court for this glyphosate use business. So that's another good step in the right direction. Political decision-making must be informed by the best available independent scientific evidence. Well, this is true. Councillors in all these different local authorities, they've got to understand exactly what is going on, how much it's going to cost, etc. And we needed to trial alternatives separately at a large scale under real-world conditions. So that's what Cardiff Council decided to do. We are the sitting contractor in Cardiff since 1999, and a chap called John Maidment is operations manager down at Cardiff on the parks and housing and the barrage. And together we said, yes, we'll have to go ahead with a trial. It meant a lot of investing in new equipment, a new methodology, but we did it. Obviously, there's a duty of care by local government to maintain safe pavements. So that's the reason why weed control is so important, to avoid slip hazards, etc., and more litigation. So in the trial, we decided to trial acetic acid, which is new way weed spray, foam stream, which is a contact herbicide, and so is that. Glyphosate, as we talked, as Peter said, systemic. It's translocated through the plant, and that was used to benchmark all the alternative treatments. And then we had some controls in different wards. We used 4 wards. We just picked them out the hat, who was going to be, which one's going to be foam stream, which one's going to be acetic acid, and which one's going to be glyphosate, and the control as well. And we didn't know where the controls were. There's no other approved weed control treatments that we used. We didn't use no mix dual and on this trial. Sustainability is one of these words that people band about and say it's very important, but what is it? What does it actually mean? It's the coming together, it's the melding of society, environment, and the economy. Sustainability, it incorporates 3 of these sectors, and the alternative treatments must be no more environmentally damaging than current pavement weed control treatments, effective at controlling weeds, and obviously cost effective and practical to use. I think that's very important. So we measured obviously the cost to do with any weed control when you're a contractor. Labour is the biggest cost. Environmental, we used see what the product use was, the water use, which is very interesting, the fuel use, and a life cycle analysis for a full assessment of all the environmental impacts. And obviously, that's the most important thing: customer satisfaction and quality. How effective have the treatments been? Are they effective? But obviously, is everybody happy with what happened with the results? That's the foam stream piece of equipment. That's an 800-litre tank, and you've got to have a decent machine to be able to transport it around the streets. This is. I've got to say that the actual report has not been published yet. It will be published hopefully in the next 3 or 4 weeks. But I'm just taking bits that we've gleaned from the operation. And the cost is the highest. It's more than 10 times the cost of glyphosate application. The equipment cost, that cost me £19,999, that piece of equipment. You've got to have multiple operators, as I'll show you in a minute. And it's very slow to apply. So I would say on a good day, you might get 3 kilometres a day. Environmentally, it's got the highest impact. The water use, exceptionally high. I heard something about avocado pear. It takes 250 litres to grow an avocado. I don't know if anybody knew that, but that's in a year, that's what it takes. But to do 3 kilometres of street pavements with that machine, you'd be talking about 2,500 litres of water. So as you can see, in this day and age, you've got these climate change situations, very hot summer. To go around using what would be 1,200 kilometres would be 960,000 litres of water, I think is unsustainable. Fuel use exceptionally high because you're heating that water up. It's at boiling point all day, so all day that water's got to be boiling. And the life cycle analysis was the highest environmental impact. So again, you'll see this when the report comes out. Customer satisfaction, look, it was high because it did a good job. Because if you put boiling hot water on a weed, yes, the cells will collapse and the weeds will die, but only for about that day, because they'll come back again because there's nothing happened to the roots. You need multiple operators because that piece of equipment there is not really ideal for going around street pavements. I mean, that's quite a big street, but if you go to somewhere like Bristol or Swansea, where you've got old infrastructure, Edinburgh, Durham, you name it, it's not going to happen. You need somebody to take that pipe over all the parked cars. The actual resting pressure in that machine is 30 bar. And when it comes to the trigger, it's 12 bar. So if anything happens to the pipe and it bursts, then you've got a problem, especially if somebody's going around with a pram and a baby. So comparing hot foam with glyphosate, based on the data, say 1,200 kilometres of treatment, 63 times diesel use, 62 times water use, 31 times labour, and 1.44 million per treatment season. So if you were doing it 3 times in that year, that would cost you 1.44 million. Is this really an alternative? New Way weed spray, yes, we've used New Way weed spray not only on this council trial, but for the last few years since it's been in production from Headland Amenity. So acetic acid, like I say, 5 grams a litre is your vinegar that you put on fish and chips. This is 240 grams a litre, so it's 50 times more powerful. The cost was kind of medium cost, we think, twice glyphosate price or cost. Multiple applications. You needed 4 applications in the ward that we did in Cardiff, and there's supply issues as well with it. Environmental is medium. Product use very high, as you'll see in the figures in a couple of minutes. And LCA, the life cycle analysis, was greater than glyphosate. Customer satisfaction quality, low. Ineffective treatment, strong odours. Again, fish and chip shop was mentioned. And also, when we finished the 4th application, the councillor got onto the John Maidman and said, could you come back with glyphosate, please? So we'd done 4 of those, and then we had to go back in October and do a glyphosate treatment just to tidy the place up. Comparing with glyphosate on the data, 1,200 kilometres treated, 4 applications instead of 3, twice the diesel use, 875 of those per week, 20 pallets per application. You need to have a lorry behind you just to take you to have enough stuff for the day. Triple rinse, 40 bottles, that's going to take time, and a lot of time. 25 times more waste, and £336,000 per treatment season. Is this really an alternative? Now, the other part of the trial was using glyphosate, and this was the lowest cost, precise and rapid treatment using the Weed It. This is the Weed It. Complete Weed Control brought this machine, or the equipment, or the technical information from Holland back in 1997. It won the best new product in the show at Soltex in 1997, September, and it's without doubt the world's leading spot treatment applicator for street pavements. It's not only used in amenity, but it's used all over agriculture, all over the world, Brazil, America, the Far East, you name it. But that chap, Roel de Jong, who invented this, has got that machine working to do spot treatment all over the world. We've got about 60 of these machines all over the country. They're very effective. And then environmentally, it was the lowest environmentally. We have an 80% reduction of glyphosate using that machine. It's because there's 15 nozzles under there. There's infrared sensors. When the infrared goes across a weed, it sends a message up to the computer. The computer then just zaps that weed with the right amount of herbicide. The water use is very low, so you could do on average 15 kilometers with 200 liters of water. Fuel use is low and very low environmental impact. Customer satisfaction, quality, very high, and the most effective treatment is what we came out with on this trial. So if you go towards street sweeping, which we think is a very powerful tool as well in our war against weeds, time is crucial. Sweeping clears silt and detritus before weeds establish, and useful to integrate with glyphosate. Reduces number of treatments, and at the right time, it is a good way to go. Medium costs and medium environmental impacts, because it's obviously using quite a bit of fuel. Now then, weed burning. That's not what you want to come home to after somebody's taken a bit of thinking that's the way forward. So high costs, hazardous to people and property, high environmental impacts, including CO2 emissions, carbon footprint, etc. And it doesn't control perennial weeds. Now then, these steel brushes, very high costs because the machine's high. Damage to infrastructure, especially on old cobblestone type areas. High environmental impacts. Steel is manufactured as carbon intensive. And obviously you use a lot of steel fragments during the day and they get washed down into the drain system. And they don't control perennial weeds. Hand weeding, that's not me. And that's not either, but hand weeding, it's tried and tested, definitely. High costs, because have you ever tried to pull weeds out of a pavement? Don't bother. Low environmental impact, obviously, but annual weed control requires a lot of labour. Perennial weeds and trying to pull Budley out is very challenging as well. What's actually happening in the real world? This is, I'll wrap it up as soon as I can. This is different boroughs in London. They are all using glyphosate because they've got to. They have trialled alternatives, but obviously, I know, for instance, Hammersmith and Fulham, they bought 3 of those foam stream machines, but they are in the corner of the yard, and they've gone back to glyphosate. In Wales, we've got 33 local authorities. Of the 33, 15 still intend to carry on. 18 are reviewing or intending to review its use. But obviously, when this report comes out, they might be thinking again. And then the last slide, how long does it take to manage a hectare of Himalayan balsam? We think that's about 2 days. Strimming would take a week. Hand cutting would take 8 weeks. And hand pulling would take probably 10 weeks. To sum up, current alternatives are environmentally damaging and costly, and some don't work. All alternatives have a higher life cycle analysis environmental impact than glyphosate. And alternatives may work for some annual invasive plants, i.e. balsam, but do not work on deep-rooted perennials, giant hogweed or invasive knotweeds. And even if alternatives work on invasive plants, they take so long to work that an invasive plant is likely to spread and or the project will be finished before the job's done. Okay, thanks very much.